Hello and welcome back to the finale of A Fall from Grace. So, in the previous part, they were running away from Lysander. They managed to get away from him, but unfortunately he ended up catching up with them. And Cedric had to do something that he wished that he would never have had to do, which is to essentially take a life. And even though we know that he did not deal the finishing blow, it was actually somebody else, it's still going to be weighing heavily on Cedric's heart. And as much as Vincent wants to cheer him up, as much as Vincent wants to distract him or whatever, it's still going to be something that he's going to have to face, himself, whether he's going to be comfortable with it or not. And considering the fact that he's going to go to the funeral of the guy who was obsessively looking for him and almost killed his own boyfriend, I sure hope that this is going to be what he needs in order to be able to move on and, move on to a future with his boyfriend Vincent and not keep stewing in what happened. But yeah, it's not going to help that he's probably going to end up seeing the guy's parents. So yeah. Anywho, what else? They're away from the masquerade now. They have parted ways. And, well, bittersweet, I'm pretty sure that this is not the last time that they're going to see them. They're probably going to see them later. But yeah. Anyway, so without further ado, let us finish out A Fall from Grace. They resumed their march at a much slower pace than before, walking past a number of carriages that had been parked close by. It was easy to forget just how influential Lysander's family was. The amount of people there did not seem to match the size of the building. Cedric chose to make a head start and open the heavy doors while most of the crowd were still conversing outside. The low and solemn creak reverberated along the aisles, drawing the attention of people gathered around the dark red coffin, which had been left shut. No surprise there, Cedric thought to himself. The coyote instantly recognized both Lysander's parents and took his hat off to greet them respectfully. Without a word, he wandered over to the right side pews with Victor following suit and sat himself down close to the edge on the second row from the front. Lysander's father excused himself with the priest and headed over to where Cedric was sitting, with his wife following him a moment later. Their facial expressions were glacial and impossible to decipher, as always, but today there was something different hidden behind them. The old male lion heaved a long and heavy sigh, placing his walking stick between his shiny black boots. "Good to see you here, young Durrell. Thank you for coming." "I had to." He knew that this wasn't a good answer, but 3 words had been a lot more than he thought that he'd been able to say to the 2 lions. "I always thought that you had more sense in your little finger than he had in his whole life." "He would have been happy to see you here, that much I'm sure about." "Who is this friend of yours?" Cedric was caught off guard and glanced over at Victor, who stood up to shake their hands. "My name's Victor. Pleased to meet you, sir, ma'am. I used to work at Cedric's parents' house. I met your son a few times. I thought that I'd come to pay my respects." "Thank you, sir. Much appreciated." Despite his best efforts in front of Cedric, Lysander's father was looking at the fox as one with a large cowpat. "Shall your parents be joining us today, Cedric?" The thought those words carried with them was what he'd been dreading the most. "I am afraid that I don't know." "No matter, dear boy. We'll see you later." And with that, the 2 walked away. The crowd started piling in, and the growing sound of footsteps pervaded the hall. "I hope you didn't mind me going off script, my dear." Cedric rested his arm against the fox's, discreetly taking hold of his hand for just an instant. "Absolutely not. You did exactly the right thing. There was no chance in hell that I was going to manage any semblance of a conversation." Then he froze. A pair of dark eyes were focused on him from all the way across the aisle. For a moment, they seemed to resemble Lysander's. Slowly, a face filled up the space around them, the dark face of a middle-aged coyote. So they'd come after all, attending the funeral of a young man that they'd watched lead their son down a lavish path of self-destruction. Observing him as he sat next to the boy whose family they had kicked out without hesitation. The boy who'd they'd feared would turn their son into a sexual deviant. Thriving on a dose of courage that he didn't know was in him, Cedric wrapped his arm around the fox's shoulder as a response, at just the right angle for this to be visible to his parents. He felt the gaze lie heavily upon him for the first half of the ceremony, until he finally managed to shift his thoughts back to the reason that he was there in the first place. The funeral itself was nothing out of the ordinary. It all felt very impersonal, but Cedric had been expecting that to be the case. The two older lions conducted it the same way that they would a business meeting. When the time came for them to say a few words, they began by getting the lion's age wrong. Their whole speech was dry and impersonal, as if they were following an old script. That stifling mundanity Lysander had always felt in this church was ever present. The seconds ticked on, but time had come to a standstill. Cedric could picture the lion sitting atop the shiny red coffin, looking at him with his father's same icy stare. The thought that of all the people in the room, he was the last to have seen Lysander alive weighed heavily on his conscience. Cedric, the gentleman bandit who had vowed never to resort to violence just a few months earlier, had shot someone he had once considered a friend, not once, but 3 times. He was desperately running through the past events, searching for some words that he could have said or an action that he could have taken that would have prevented this tragic outcome. But the more that he thought about it, the more that it became clear that there was nothing that he could have done. Each event neatly slotted into place, firmly fastened to those that preceded and followed it. His 2 biggest mistakes were telling Lysander about Victor and thinking the lion had abandoned him the night before, that out of negligence. Now he understood. Lysander was already in love with him at that time, in his own twisted way. His mere existence had been tormenting the lion, day in and out. Had Cedric not told him about the fox, he would have come searching for him anyway. And had he not met Victor that night, his relationship with Lysander was destined to fall apart regardless. It was only a matter of time. He knew that he had done the right thing. A little humanity and remorse were the price that he had to pay for his freedom. He shook his head, and the vision of the gentle and misunderstood lion sitting in front of the altar vanished. This bastard had devoted the last chunk of his life to tracking down and killing the man Cedric loved. He'd spent heaps of money constructing a giant booby trap for the coyote and the other bandits to fall into. He'd even had his own costume designed to resemble Victor's outfit and mask as a way of easily luring Cedric in. The coyote now realized that he had been feeling sorry for the imaginary Lysander that he had first met as a teenager, rather than the real Lysander who'd shown his true colors 2 days ago. That fucker had succeeded in manipulating him one final time. As the ceremony came to a close, the funeral goers stood up, most of them walking over to the wealthy lion couple to offer their condolences. Before Cedric knew it, a familiar badger and griffin had approached him. "Cedric, we're very glad to see you here, if one can say so given the circumstances." Quite a dry ceremony, wasn't it? Doesn't really surprise me. Nor us. We never told you this, but a couple of years ago, we were staying at Lai's and ended up snooping through his parents' documents together as a bit of a laugh. And guess what? We found that exact speech they just recited up there, word for word, other than the age, which they didn't even attempt to get right. Cedric's eyes widened. That's bleak. They never really knew him and didn't care the least about mending their relationship. That being said, Lai had become a bit of a mystery to us all as of late. We didn't even know that he planned to attend the Hiltford mass ball. Had you seen him at all during those last few months? No, I moved out of his aunt's place and didn't speak to him again. At this point in the conversation, one could have expected an apology from the two for having ditched their so-called friend, leaving him at the mercy of an armed bandit in a dark alley. Yet, no apology came. They had probably forgotten all about it once they'd sobered up the morning after. The whole time they were speaking, Victor was standing behind his partner, restlessly tapping his right foot and attempting to go by unnoticed. And for good reason. During his only previous encounter with Jack and Bill, he had Cedric held at knife point and had been clumsily attacked by the drunken Griffin. Who could have known that it had come to this? Cedric chose to poke them a bit. He was too curious to hear what rumors had spread about the lion's death. Now that he discovered Dion had been following them, he wondered if the hyena had been spotted near Lysander's body. Surely there was a reason he'd taken a lot longer than them to get back to camp. What actually happened? I've heard so many versions and none of them add up. None of us know. The Badger leaned in, lowering his voice. You've heard how the old manor in Castle Hillsford went up in flames? Cedric nodded. The guards were scouring the town for the bandits that had done it, and then they found Lai's body in Hangman's Lane, just off the main square. Shot him 4 times they had. There was nothing left of his right hand either. That's horrible. The 4th bullet must have been Dion's doing. Perhaps Cedric hadn't finished Lysander off after all, and the bandit leader had stepped in to finish the job. The guards caught sight of his huge beast in the shadows. It spoke to them with a hideous voice, announcing that they were in the presence of death itself. Those who weren't utterly terrified fired their rifles, praying that it was merely a mortal soul, but in the blink of an eye, it had vanished. Cedric had to contain a grin. He felt entirely grateful to the hyena for watching over him and his lover. Oh really, Jack, do you hear the nonsense that you're spouting? It was what I heard. He most likely got into a duel with one of his fleeing bandits. Now that sounds more believable. Either way, he'll be missed. Aye, that he will. Say, Cedric, you wouldn't want to join us for an evening, would you? We're heading over to the old mill gambling house once this is over to take our minds off of things. Might do you some good too. Hiding the growing aversion he felt for those two was no easy feat. Yet Cedric miraculously pulled it off. I'm sorry, I have plans for the evening already. No matter then. As Jack and Bill walked away without even a goodbye, the crowd wrapped itself around them. Victor muttered sarcastically. Past you had real shit taste in friends. Bitch, I didn't even have any real friends. The 2 bandits picked up their belongings and stepped into the aisle. I know. How are you feeling now? Better, I think. I've been mulling things over and coming here was the right choice. Just as his words had escaped his lips, Cedric looked straight into his father's eyes. Both his parents hadn't moved from where they'd been sitting during the ceremony. So this was their game. He was no novice to the silent treatment. His father in particular seemed to relish letting time linger before a long talk, knowing the young coyote would inevitably crack and admit to his own perceived wrongdoings first. Even now, Cedric's brain was automatically attempting to interpret what they might want from him. Had his mother recognized him at the masquerade ball, she would have easily connected the dots between Cedric's description of the girl that he fancied and the current sight of Victor at his side. Surely there was no chance left for him after this great sin of all. And yet, them sitting there clearly signified that they were willing to give him another chance, against all odds, as if his life was a constant test to see if he was worthy of their respect or not. Cedric shook his head before familiar old tears could well up within him. That day that he had gone to the old house and had been too afraid to knock on the door, would they have actually taken him in again? He might have had more of a chance than he thought. No. He wasn't playing along anymore. I'm gonna pick this because it's a little bit funnier. He walked towards them and bowed politely. I greatly enjoyed our last dance, Mother. Pity you were a bit more flat-footed than I remembered. Just as his mother opened their mouth, the coyote turned on his heels and marched away. Though Victor followed silently, he was unable to hold in a mischievous grin. Cedric reached the exit and tugged on the cold handle, stepping into the chilly winter air with the fox and letting the door shut behind them. Deep within him, he knew that he'd never see his parents again. The rest of the day went by a lot faster than he had expected. The coach back to Dyrenham was right on time and the driver sped along the road at a brisk, if not moderately dangerous pace. Once they reached the town, the couple headed to the local pawn shop. Cedric, who was still well dressed from the funeral, had no trouble handing in some of the valuables without appearing suspicious. After exiting the shop, he patted his pockets, exchanging a satisfied glance with the victor. Following a spur-of-the-moment decision, Cedric led the both of them around the town for a bit of sightseeing. He'd heard talk of how beautiful the local architecture was and was curious to see if the fox would like it and listen to his thoughts. One last celebratory drink at the Bishop's Arms felt mandatory before setting off again, especially after what had turned out to be a challenging day for Cedric. As they stepped out of the pub and onto the main road again, the sun was already setting. Despite the late hour, they were both excited and looked forward to the next, lengthier part of their journey eastward. After some debate, they settled on reaching the outskirts of London town in a couple of weeks as their final goal. Unfortunately, Victor had failed to take into account just how far the closest town to rest at east of Dryernham was, and the couple ended up having to sleep out in the open for the night, throwing any and all clothes and rags that they were carrying over them in a desperate effort to keep warm. Slowly but surely they traveled on for the next 4 days until one morning, when they had just gone past the picturesque village named Foxley, they happened across an elegant old farmhouse on the left side of the road. While the barn was in good condition, the main building had seen better days. What drew the attention of the both bandits were the two wooden for sale signs, one of them nailed to the gate and the other to the front door. The couple shared a glance. "I was about to ask you the same thing." Cedric scratched his neck skittishly. "I don't know. Perhaps we shouldn't risk straying from our original plan?" "Hang the plan. Remember the night that you and I had our first kiss? That simple home that we were fantasizing about. This is it." "Come on, V. How do you know that there won't be others?" Victor was giddy with excitement. "Don't you see? Everything has lined up perfectly for this. It's all slotted into place." "It is quite the coincidence, I have to admit." The fox looked deep into Cedric's eyes. "Fate herself has led us to this moment. This is going to be our home. Can we afford it? We'll have to find out." "You mean head back to the village and inquire about it?" "Shall we?" The coyote couldn't keep his excitement at bay for a moment longer. Unable to hold still, he rushed up to the fox and shouted, "Yes!" With all the strength that he had in him, Victor picked him up and spun him around before landing a kiss on his lips. "Shall we explore the place a bit first?" The interior was in much better condition than its outward appearance would suggest. It was obvious that this has been someone's home until very recently. As they made their way around, the couple began to imagine what a life they could lead there. How they sort each room out to their likings, the crops that they'd grow, the food that they'd cook. The more that they spoke, the more that it was clear that this house was meant for them. Cedric could picture the two of them working in the old kitchen, dusting up the bedroom, relaxing by the fireplace in their parlor. A sweet country life that felt almost impossible, yet there it was, hanging before them. All they had to do was grasp it. Their ears perked at the sound of a horse and cart echoing from the path that led to the village. They rushed back outside and saw the vehicle come into view, with the words Hurley and Sons painted in Gothic lettering on the sides. They counted their lucky stars. It had been the local broker on his way to inspect the property. Here was another chance fate had gifted them. Cedric thought on his feet and muttered something along the lines of "I'll handle this" in the fox's ear. The cart came to a halt in front of them, just as expected, and the chubby gray wolf dismounted with the intention of tying the vehicle to the gate. He hadn't taken in more than a step forward when Cedric loudly cut him off, feigning an indignant tone and putting on his most upper-class-sounding accent. "And where have you been, sir?" "I beg your pardon?" "I said word 2 weeks ago that I would be here today to buy this dwelling. Are you illiterate by chance?" "Oh, I don't think that I was told." "Absolutely ludicrous. I expect you to knock off a quarter of the price." The wolf got a tad defensive at having been cornered in such a manner. And who are you, sir?" "The name Alistair Derbyfield rings a bell, no doubt?" "Why, yes, of course." Old Hurley was clearly too embarrassed to admit that he didn't recognize the name Cedric had made up on the spot, and chose to play along. Let me show you the property, Mr. Derbyfield." "Why on earth should I need to see it again? I've told you that I intend to buy it." Yes, right, my apologies. My servant Vincent and I have plenty of time to have a look around, since we have to wait for you so long." The coyote picked the smallest of the sacks that he kept his share of the loot in and emptied its contents on the old barrel closest to them. Gold coins and necklaces with the occasional ring shone back at the stunned old wolf. This was clearly well over the amount that he'd expected them to offer. Cedric dropped the empty sack last, with an air of indifference. Pleasure doing business with you, gentlemen. The wolf grabbed the sack and filled it up again and scampered off, wishing the farm's new owners well. 18 months later. Bright sunlight and the sweet sound of birdsong had long crept into the room, to the point that Cedric could no longer pretend that he was still sleeping. He rubbed his eyes, waited a few seconds for them to adjust to the light, and rolled over to his left. Victor was already up and had left his side of the bed nice and tidy. He had left Cedric to catch up on some sleep while he waited for the local butcher to call on them, as he had become the tradition of each Saturday. They'd sell him a portion of the fruit and veg that they had grown in the orchard and the vegetable patch in exchange for some of the best meat. With how late in the morning it was, the butcher had surely come and gone by now. Cedric got out of the bed and washed his face with a bowl and jug on his bedside table. Next he threw on some stockings, a pair of pantaloons, a shirt, and a waistcoat for good measure, combing his hair while looking into the tiny mirror they'd hung to the wall opposite of the bed. He trotted downstairs and into the kitchen to fry himself some eggs as a late breakfast. Still no sign of the fox. "Hey, V, you in the parlor?" No answer. Something didn't feel right. Cedric rested the pan that he had been holding on the table and went to investigate. But Victor was nowhere in the house. Had he gone to town to purchase something? Both of them had enjoyed becoming creatures of habit over the last year and a half, and rarely did they break those habits without informing each other about it. Cedric slid his boots on, opened the front door, and stepped out into the yard. "Victor?" "Over here." The fox's voice was coming from the barn. The coyote pushed the stiff old door open to reveal his partner sitting at the old work table, intent on carving a slab of wood. "I was worried about you. What on earth have you been up to?" The fox sat up straight and swiveled around on the bench. "Surprise!" He was holding a neatly carved and decorated chessboard, almost identical to the one that Cedric had owned as a child. "You didn't." "I did. Now I can start beating you at this game again, and about time too." "You're not gonna beat me without any chess pieces now, are you?" "My dear, surely you don't think that I'd be foolish enough to forget about them." The fox pointed at the work table, and it was then that Cedric realized what he'd thought was scattered tools and knickknacks were actually meticulously crafted pieces. Kings, queens, knights, pawns, each with a unique design. "I can't believe it. You did this all for me?" "You rediscovered your artistic talents, and I discovered mine." "So that's what you've been doing instead of accompanying me on my walks lately. And I was gonna chide you for slacking off." Victor rose to his feet and grabbed his boyfriend's cheek affectionately. "You, me, dinner, and a mug of porter, and a proper chess match. What do you say? Add some late-night sex, and that sounds like my idea of a perfect day." "Bet. You promised that you taught me, didn't you?" The coyote placed a hand on Victor's chest, pulling him close firmly as he slid his own hand down the fox's crotch. "That I did, handsome. Just you wait." Victor growled excitedly in response. "Come on now, let's get some lunch ready. I'll grab a few carrots and parsnips from the vegetable patch." Once he was back inside the house, Cedric took a brief detour to the tiny cellar, curious to see what meat old Adam had handed Victor earlier. This turned out to be a juicy-looking steak, some poultry, and a number of thick slices of bacon, which the fox had covered in salt. He grabbed a few of those slices and rushed back to the kitchen, where he was joined just in time for Victor to catch a whiff of the sizzling meat. "I've been dreaming of that bacon for days." The fox took a long, deep breath while he chopped up the carrots. "Had enough of bean soup, eh?" "Who, me? Never." The warm and hearty meal was followed by the sort of satisfying and jovial conversation that occurs most often on a full stomach. Next, the two discussed their plans for the remainder of the day. Cedric chose to walk lunch off straight away, while Victor apologized for not joining him yet again since he needed to make the finishing touches on the handiwork in the barn, but promised that he'd take a long walk with the coyote the day after. Cedric slid his overcoat and gloves on and locked the front door behind him. As he stepped onto the damp and shady patch, he thought that he caught sight of some movement in the bushes opposite of their gate. Then a faint rustle of leaves. He waited, crouching to the ground to see if he could catch another glimpse of whatever had been responsible for the sound. Must have been some wild animal. It had hidden itself deep amongst the thick overgrowth, and after waiting half a minute longer, Cedric gave up and resumed his walk. The route that he had taken most often was a little complex, but had developed over time to encompass the main sights and features of the landscape surrounding the couple's new home. He'd stay on the main path for a while, then cut across a tiny patch of woodland to an open meadow. Keeping to his right and going downhill, he'd followed an aging stone wall that ran beside some long wheat fields. Shortly after, the overgrowth path emerged into a mossy, fern-covered forest, with a tiny brook gently making its way down with him, whose bubbling sounds would soothe any tired ear. This was his favorite spot. He and Victor had discovered some stone ruins crouched in the twisted branches and tree trunks. They'd since spun many an epic or magical tale regarding what sort of structure it could have been, who could have built it, and what the life they led might have been like. Then from there, he'd follow the last leg of the journey, climbing uphill again, passing some other farmhouses to rejoin the main path. It never failed to clear his mind and put him in a better mood, and the sights of nature in it, over changing colors and seasons, were worth more than any gold that he could have owned. He checked in on Victor, who was still hard at work in the barn, before setting foot inside, hanging his coat and leaving his boots by the entrance. His mind tactfully reminded him that there was housework to be done, which Cedric kindly acknowledged while choosing to do something else entirely. He sat at his desk in the parlor and set a wide sheet of drawing paper down before him, picked up some charcoal and got to work sketching some of the twinning trees he'd seen on his walk. After such a long time spent telling himself and his partner and his friends about how he'd given up his art, one morning only a couple of weeks after settling into their new home, a spark had burst to life within him and his passion had been rekindled. He'd mostly sketched natural objects and the landscape surrounding him, carefully working his way up to his beloved portraitures, which had taken the form of multiple pieces depicting Victor in many poses and different outfits, or lack thereof. Selwyn will have a lot to see the day that he turns up. There was a knock at the door. Perhaps the fox had forgotten his key. "V, is that you?" No answer. Then newer, louder knockings. Cedric got up and sauntered over to the entrance, wondering if it might be old Adam again. To his surprise, there on the steps leading up to the door stood a brightly and flamboyantly dressed bat, just a few inches shorter than him. He was carrying a broad display, bright silverware and kitchen utensils with a leather strap nailed to it, which ran around his right shoulder for support. "Good afternoon, sir. Might I interest a fine fellow such as yourself in some equally fine silverware?" Cedric smiled. "You caught me in the middle of something, but yes, we do need some new silverware. I was just thinking so the other day." The bat picked up a shiny fork and dangled it from its handle. "Finest piece in this collection, imported from France. Certain to impress the missus." "Indeed. Though I regret to inform you I am not married." "My good fellow, I don't judge." The coyote chose to keep up the banter by poking the peddler a bit. "I live together with another young man." He would usually pull out his card to get a confused reaction out of people, only to then elaborate on the statement once he was asked further questions, spinning the same tale that he'd used on old Hurley the broker. "I said that I don't judge, my dear boy. To each his own." The bat looked and sounded completely unfazed, much to his surprise. Cedric had no choice but to return to the main topic of conversation, as if nothing had transpired. "That is indeed a fine specimen, though I was more interested in any knives that you might have. I'm in need of something that will make cutting and slicing large chunks of meat a lot easier." "Knives? Now let me see." The peddler dangled a fat, shiny, and sharp-looking blade where the fork had been just an instant ago. "This is my best piece. It cuts with a real smoothness to it, and it's sharper than a dagger." He grinned. "You could easily slit someone's throat with it." During this last remark, the bat took the knife from the handle and pointed it straight at Cedric. The coyote let out an involuntary nervous chuckle, unable to tell whether this was just a poorly delivered joke or a genuine threat. He began to worry. He didn't have any weapons on him and was by himself since Victor was still in the barn. Was he about to be robbed? Was this bat actually a bandit? Not that you need me to instruct an expert like you on how to slit someone's throat. What? Isn't that right, Cedric? The coyote's eyes widened. Who are you? He took a step back. The bat grinned and stepped inside, holding his knife up firmly. The real question is... He pointed at something behind Cedric. Who are they? The panicked coyote spun around to be greeted by the sight of multiple people who had crept in and were standing behind him. Laughter burst out and echoed across the room. These were none other than a tall and broad hyena, a large tiger, a lean Doberman, and a chubby house cat. A mix of relief, joy, and rage bubbled up within Cedric, causing him to lose all control and jump up and down excitedly. Fuck off, no way. Fucking brilliant. We might have cost Cedric 10 years of his life. Our humblest apologies, Cedric, my lad, but this was an opportunity that we simply couldn't let slide. You're all absolute cunts, and who the fuck is this one? He turned back to the door and now saw the familiar sight of a brown sun bear grinning back at him in place of a silverware peddler that he had met. I should have known. I thought that voice sounded familiar. The bat ears, wig, and fake muzzle were lying on the wooden board Ridley was carrying. Fucking hell, your prosthetic work has gotten really good. The bear gave a smug reply. I know. Thank you, Ced. Victor suddenly appeared behind the bear. He'd rushed over to the house upon hearing the commotion, worrying something had happened to Cedric. Ridley? His face lit up with joy. Hello, Vic. Boys, what on earth are you doing here? Dion cleared his throat and took a step forward, demanding the group's attention as usual. Quite right. We owe the both of you an explanation. As of a week ago, we have taken to the road again, on our way to a new part of the country that we might set up a camp in. We thought back on our Vic and Cedric with more than a pinch of melancholy, and wondered if we too wanted to make our way east. This was put to the vote and approved unanimously. Victor gave his partner a little nudge. Shit. We're just that popular. Thus we began our journey reaching this Bonnewee village. Yesterday evening, Hollis, Blake, and I visited the local public house. Pale ale's pretty good. There we heard talk of how an old farmhouse on the outskirts of township had been sold to a most influential nobleman. My goodness, I can't believe that they're still on about it. Oh? That is a tale Cedric spun on an old broker when we bought the place. Aye. So my name is now Alistair Derbyfield to all of you, and this is my faithful servant, Vincent. Well played then, Alistair, my lad. You had all of us fooled too, and to cut to a long story short, we decided to have a look at said farmhouse today to see if there was anything worth, borrowing indefinitely. We sent Blake to snoop, only for him to return with the biggest shit-eating grin plastered all across his face. So it was you I saw in the bushes. Imagine our joy at learning that we stumbled across you two. It took us an hour just to plan our dramatic entrance. We were just that excited. Fuck you. I'm not letting you have the last laugh without getting my revenge. Just you wait. Cedric, I want you to know that I was dead set against it from the start. Victor moved closer to the coyote and took his hand. Lads, we bid you welcome into our new home. The group was then led into the parlor. Only now did the others manage to take a proper look at their surroundings, nodding their heads and muttering varying degrees of compliments. I love it. Who's responsible for the decor? Part of the furniture was already here when we bought the place. I left the rest up to Cedric. Dion patted the coyote on the back. You have great taste, my boy. It wasn't long before Selwyn had caught sight of the portraits of Victor hanging in the far left corner of the room. Are those your work? Growing red in the face at the cat's enthusiasm, Cedric led Selwyn over to his drawing table, showing his art to the others hadn't gotten any easier since his childhood days. I've started drawing again, yes. Those landscapes are stunning, and that looks just like Victor. We shall have to sit for you for a group portrait. Blake chimed in from the other side of the room. And you said that we can't steal anything? He was swiftly backhanded by Ridley in response. You'll have to tell us all about how you've been carrying on since we last saw you. We shall only do so on one condition. That being, that you join us for dinner. Dion held out his hand. It is a deal, my good friend. Then he raised his voice, giving the group new orders. All right, tail-raisers, I want each of you to head back to the carriage one at a time and pick up the slack that you've been carrying. Lastly, Hollis, you can go and fetch the old carriage herself. You don't mind if we park our belongings behind your lovely barn, do you? Not at all. An hour later, after the others had moved all their belongings and gotten comfortable, they split into two different groups, though at first these weren't rigid, and there was much coming and going between them. Dion, Selwyn, and Ridley had remained at Cedric's side indoors, while Hollis and Blake had stuck around Victor, volunteering to help collect some firewood in the forest. Cedric and Victor had planned for the group to have dinner outdoors, which meant a nice big bonfire was of the essence. A cool breeze was running across the shady woodland, bringing the green leaves to life on each bough with a loud rustle. Victor stood facing it so that his hair wouldn't be blown across his face. Wandering and bending down to pick up the best-looking sticks and fallen branches they could find was a good excuse for making conversation. I really think that you struck gold with this house. It's beautiful, the area is lovely, and you two look just at home in it. Victor couldn't help but smile. This is a life that I want to lead. Things were looking a little bare throughout the winter when we first got here, but since the first days of spring last year, it's all felt like a dream. I still have to pinch myself each morning. I've always been skeptical of living with a roof over my head. But your place is all right. It's warming me to the idea. The fox replied jokingly by putting a farmer's accent. Rough old Blake dreaming of living a farmer's life? Well, I never. Piss off. Any fool can grow some cabbages. Well, I like to see you try, all of you. Each one of us deserves a place like this. Victor hadn't realized just how happy he'd been until the moment that he had put it into words. He stopped himself from rambling on and shook his head, a feeling of guilt creeping up on his spine. I don't deserve to feel this happy. The Doberman placed a hand on Victor's shoulder and gave him a moderate shake. Don't be daft. Of course you do. Right, Hollis? The tiger was looking away with his head held low. Are you all right? Hollis took a deep breath. I don't want to spoil your enthusiasm. Victor laid down the bundle of sticks and branches that he had been gathering and took the tiger's hand. You can speak your mind with us, always. It's nothing. His eyes were damp. I'm jealous, Victor. You did it. You two made it out of banditry. I wish that I could say the same about myself. Surely with all your savings you'd be able to afford a place to live. Yes, but it's not that simple. What I'd love most would be to open a tavern again. But you can't just do that from one day to the next. You either need to build everything from scratch, or you get lucky and find somewhere that's closed down and get to work refurbishing it. Either way, it's pricey and a huge risk. What if things don't go well and I've spent everything that I have on it? It would be back to the streets for me. Plus, I have the rest of you boys to think about before myself. Never mind us. Have you told Dion about this? Hollis shook his head. Surely Dion would help you out. But what about the masquerade? I'd be leaving you all of my work to do. I can't. We literally met that skunk Alvin a month ago. Who's this? Another bandit that we came across during a job after we all reunited. Spent a few days together and Dion offered him a place in the group. Gosh, Cedric and I really have been missing out on all the news. Did he accept? Aye. He said that he'd be joining us in a few weeks from now. So the lot of us can share your workload, Hollis. If it's something that you really want to do, why not? We all want to make it out eventually. And unlike the rest of us, you have an idea of what the fuck you want to do. Then who knows, maybe in the future Ridley and Dion would find some work at a theater that they're lucky, and I'll find something too, whatever it is. That sounds like a plan to me, Hall. The tiger sat down at the tree stump and was listening intently. Then he nodded to himself as he wrapped up his thoughts. Maybe it is time that I took a step back. We'll all support you as much as we can. Hollis smiled and stood up with a grunt. Thank you, lads. I always knew that I could count on you. The three bandits began their walk back to the farm. Speaking of steps, what's your next step with Cedric, Vic? The fox wasn't exactly sure what had been asked or how best to answer. Well, I think we're both settled into a life that we're happy with. We may have enough money coming in by selling our crops at market, and I think Cedric is planning to take a trip to the larger towns to sell some of his art once he's gotten enough practice. Might get a wealthy commissioner or two. Everyone wants a portrait after all. Quite right, but I meant between the two of you, in your relationship. Now the tiger's question became a lot clearer. It was something Victor had been thinking about for quite some time. He replied with some hesitation. I've been thinking about it. And I've decided that I want to propose to him. I'd love to take him as my husband more than anything in the world. Although alas, there's nothing that we can do legally or even socially. You're fucking joking, Vic? Since when do we give a shit about something being legal or not? Precisely. You really think that I should go through with this? What do you think? We can organize a proper bandit wedding for the two of you. Victor grew red in the face. What are you waiting for? There's no chance in hell that yo will say no. I have a nice-looking ring that you could use. I thought you and Ridley had hated weddings. Exactly. That's why I'm giving it to you, you absolute tosser. Or better still, ask Dion. He's bound to give you something better than me. Go on, Vic. As soon as you feel the moment is right, do it. Take that chance. The fox's fur almost stood on end with excitement. The mere thought thrilled him more than anything. All right. I will. Hollis pulled him into a hug. That's my boy. Back indoors, Cedric and the rest of the bandits had sat themselves down in the parlor, the others demanding to be shown all the coyote's sketches and artwork. Once they'd run through every one of them, the conversation had turned to art and culture as a broader scale. Ridley, who admitted to not knowing much that wasn't connected to tailoring, clothing design, or makeup, had still been happy to listen in and ask the occasional question. We should all take a trip to London one day and visit the museums. It feels pointless hearing talk about modern art and not actually being able to see any of it, other than the occasional black and white print. What's the latest in modern art? Well, right now, both the academics and the elites are pushing for neoclassicalism. You know, ancient Greek and Roman tragedies and the like, huge canvases, that sort that would cover the entire wall. It's all very elegant and stylized, like watching a play. Sounds like something Dion would have a wank to. You insolent bung nipper of a bear. If you must know, that art style has fallen out of favor with me. If I want to see a play, I'll go to the theater. No romanticism and is the truest form of modern art and literature. A work of art should make you feel emotions that you didn't even know you had. Should stun you with a sense of awe and terror. In short, it should offer the viewer something no other art form can. You've somehow managed to out-pretentious the most pretentious art style. Tell you what's not pretentious, Rid. Realism. Aye, I've heard about that. It's a French movement, isn't it? They favor showing just how beautiful and how ugly the real world is. I feel like it can speak to a lot more people than any other current art style. That has its own great value. But can't any artist paint the world around them? Quite right. But realism has a social and political message behind it. It's not just an object or a landscape that you might see in real life. How so? Art is communication. The moment realities have been turned into an image, the author is telling us something about how they see that reality. The bear sat in silence, mulling that thought over. I think I'm good with banditry, thank you very much. The others all laughed. I am an egalitarian, though. I'll steal a realist painting just as eagerly as a romantic one. The neoclassical canvases would be more of a team effort to steal. God knows how that would go. Our last team effort ended with a manor house burned to the ground. Noticing the timing displayed on the old grandfather clock, Cedric got up from his armchair. I should make a start of dinner. You boys stay here and make yourselves comfortable if you like. Nonsense, Ced. Helping you is the least that we can do." Dion seemed a little less enthusiastic. He noticed the kitchen's modest size from the entrance earlier. "I'll gladly take Cedric up on his courteous offer, least I should knock over things in the kitchen." The coyote chuckled at the thought of Dion hitting his head before even making it into the room. "As soon as the others get back, I'll be happy to help them get the table ready and light the bonfire outside." With that, Cedric moved into the kitchen with Selwyn and Ridley, and the trio got to work peeling potatoes, chopping up carrots and turnips, and slicing onions. "Other than missing you?" "Come on, Sel, it hasn't been that long." "So you haven't missed me, have you, Red?" "I didn't say that. Once we've all reunited, we got a few muggings and smaller jobs done around the port that we were living close to, but it just felt a bit dreary to me, especially after having said goodbye to you and Victor. It wasn't the cheeriest place, and the people were very disagreeable. Then one day, Blake and I were in town and spied a skunk going around the port, pickpocketing passerbys very skillfully. We lured him in and introduced ourselves, offered him lunch and all. What an absolutely lovely boy. He told us his name was Alvin, and he was the son of a Danish dock worker. Music is his passion. He even used to play the violin in the local ballroom. But then his father died, and he had to take up a job at the port to earn a steady income. The bastards kicked him out with no notice after a whole year, thus he resorted to stealing. Same story every time." "He sounds sweet. Did you invite him to join the group?" "Of course. He's surprisingly as soft-spoken for a dock worker, has a flair for the dramatic, and a gentleman-like charm, so of course Dion took to him straight away. He's going to be traveling to join us in a few weeks." Cedric shook his head. "You found my replacement already." "No, not at all." Selwyn was about to elaborate and explain that there was no way that they could possibly imagine replacing Cedric and Victor when he was cut off by the bear. "It's fine, Sal. He's just being a cunt." Cedric had to pause what he was doing to laugh. "I can't wait to meet him. Is he handsome?" "Not as much as you, but yes." "Oh, Sal, pass me that big piece of meat to your left, will you? I need to slice it." Without missing a beat, the cat grabbed Ridley and playfully shoved him forward. "Here you go." "You absolute bellend." Selwyn and Cedric burst out laughing, while Ridley crossed his arms, clearly annoyed that he hadn't thought of making the joke first. He quickly regained his composure. "You want me to get you that knife from earlier, Cedric? I wasn't lying when I said that it was the best one that I own." "I should slit your throat with it, Bear. But yes, please do." "What are your future plans, Cedric? We're all curious." "With Victor, you mean?" Selwyn nodded. The coyote gave it some thought. "I know marriage isn't an option realistically, but I'd still like to take the next step and propose to him. Symbolically, at least. It just feels right." Dion had reappeared, standing outside the kitchen door. The subject had clearly piqued his interest. "That is absolutely wonderful to hear, Cedric, my lad." The coyote turned to look at the bandit later, growing a little redder in the face. "What's more, I get the feeling that Victor had been meaning to talk about this for a while now, just waiting for the right moment." Cedric could see the hyena was deep in thought. But, what if I'm wrong? What if this isn't what Victor wants? What if it's too soon?" Suddenly, Dion snapped out of it and raised his arm. "Dear boy, pull yourself together. Come the beginning of July, you'll have been living with each other every day for over 2 years. And that's more than I can say for any straight couple that I've ever met." Except for one, Cedric thought to himself. The memory of that dinner-time conversation at Harold and Agnes's farmstead all those months ago resurfaced. How he'd looked up to their relationship, wishing that he might experience anything close to it. After a few years, we spoke of getting married. I waited longer than all my friends, something that they'd often taken jabs at me about. I just wanted to be sure. There's no point in spending the rest of your life with someone that you don't care for. Now was his time. Now everything felt right. I'll talk to him about it. Woo, go Ced. That's wonderful. Together we shall organize the greatest wedding that you've ever seen, and then the honeymoon. Seville, Palermo, Constantinople. The sound of the voices reached them from outside. The others had returned with the firewood. Will you my lads excuse me? I'll just go see if they need any help. Dion stepped into the yard. eager to help the rest of the group get everything ready. As he and Victor lifted a table, he kept eyeing the fox with a knowing gaze. They put the heavy object down with a grunt. Dion rested both of his hands on the surface, leaning inwards. Some murmuring followed, then the sparkle of shiny ring exchanged hands. Lastly, Dion patted Victor on the back and slipped away to pick up the tablecloths, dishes, and cutlery. Dinner was a pleasant and cheerful affair. Cedric and Victor had used part of their meat and vegetable stock, while the other half of the food had been provided by the other bandits. In the end, there was so much to eat, none of them were able to lick their plates clean, as was their usual custom. Hollis took out his dusty lute and treated the group to some old dance tunes. Cedric, Victor, and Ridley and Blake attempted some steps around the cackling bonfire. They quickly found dancing on a full stomach wasn't an easy task. Having given up on completing the dance, they collapsed onto the wooden chairs spread across the lawn and listened intently to the gentle music's coda. Each bandit then suggested and argued over which new song Hollis should play. The tiger put an end to this by beginning a song of his own choice, which was accepted with much enthusiasm by the others, who all sang along. Admitting he was exhausted for the night, he set the instrument front side up on the table, swapping it for a jug of ale. Dion took the reins for the conversation, suggesting that he should read a new poem for the occasion, written by himself. Once the others had gotten each and every possible joke out of the way, they listened in silence. The poem was about a life on the road, the desire for a home, and what each person may consider the concept of a home to be. Maybe it was just an impression, but Cedric could feel Dion's writing was getting better. It all felt a lot more coherent and approachable, like the hyena had invited them into the world of the poem instead of just trying to impress his audience with big words and grand sentences. The heart was there, and always was, and by the end, Dion concluded, the coyote could feel himself being overcome by a strong bittersweet emotion. They all clapped as the hyena bowed in gratitude, and it was then that Victor revealed the complete chess set that he had made for Cedric and gifted it to his partner. Cedric took his time to observe and comment on each piece the fox had painstakingly carved. Without a hint of hesitation, he stated that this was the best gift that he had ever received and promised Victor a match the following day. Time flew, and before they knew it, the others were packing up and saying their goodbyes. As sad as he was to see them leave, Cedric was incredibly grateful to them for such a perfect day. I'm sure that we can all agree this evening has been a delight. A chorus of aye-ayes was heard in response. Thank you for putting up with us. Your house is splendid, and you're the cutest couple that I know by far. Until the next time, lads, don't keep us waiting too long. And we look forward to meeting the new masquerade, don't we, Ced? Absolutely. Now that we know your address, we can send you both letters from time to time. Blake cleared his throat. Perhaps those of us who can't write could have some assistance from our leader. Dion rolled his eyes. Fine. One of these days I'm gonna have to start teaching you. I meant we dictate and you'd write. Why you? You impudent dog. Do you take some sort of pride in your ignorance? Shut it, both of you. That's beyond the point. We'll figure something out, so expect letters from all of us. Good luck with your art, Cedric. Hopefully you'll find some interest, and we'll get a few portraits commissioned. I still expect that group portrait one day. Of course. Safe journey, all of you. Dion raised his voice. All right, gang. Pick up all your belongings. We're setting off. Each of the bandits said their final goodbyes to the couple, who saw them off to the gate. And soon Cedric and Victor watched the light of their lanterns grow smaller and fade into the dark and silent evening landscape. This time, saying goodbye hadn't been hard, though. Cedric could still feel those familiar strong emotions welling up inside of him. Victor sighed. I miss them already. Cedric held the fox's hand as they walked back to the yard and sat at a log close to the dwindling bonfire. Thank you for introducing me to all of them. Their lips met in a gentle kiss. And that being said, we need to start asking the real questions here. If you had to murder one of them, who would it be? The coyote shoved him playfully, pinning him on the log's surface. You absolute bitch. Victor looked back at him with a lust-filled gaze. You bet. As long as you have your will with me first. Yeah, I can't do the NSFW version. Of course I will. but off-screen. But will it be alright if we move that to tomorrow and just cuddle a bit instead? I think I'm a bit too tired for anything else right now. Victor gave a warm smile in return. Of course it would be alright. He lifted his arm up, beckoning for Cedric to come lie on top of him. The coyote bent down and rested his head on Victor's chest. Both his and the fox's arms were dangling from where they lay. He felt Victor's fingers reaching out for him, and in an instant he locked hands together. We must look quite stupid right now. Why? Is anyone looking? I just meant that if one were to hypothetically look. Well, I think that they could hypothetically mind their own business. Of course, but... Cedric giggled before he was able to complete his sentence. You fucking idiot. This was followed by a long and earnest kiss. Cedric closed his eyes. The thought of their souls coexisting as one was all that he could picture in his moment. The lingering silence spoke volumes. Neither of them felt the need to say or do anything, but fondly cling to each other. We should probably head inside before the evening air gets too chilly. Victor picked himself up with a groan. Aye, aye, sir. Cedric was just about ready to walk over to the front door when he noticed Victor wasn't moving and had a nervous look on his face. He was fidgeting with his hands, and his downward gaze darted from one grassy patch to the next. Is something the matter, love? Cedric, It's been such a perfect evening. I don't really know how to preface this, but I've been thinking about it for a long time and... Without warning, the fox got down on one knee. He slid his hand into his right pocket, feeling around for the ring Dion had given him before dinner. Where was it? He could have sworn that he had left it there. Perhaps it was his left pocket instead of his right. He moved his hand as quickly as he could, but still nothing. Fuck. Had it fallen on the ground earlier? There was no knowing where the hell it was, if that was the case. Cedric, I'm sorry. He looked back at his partner only to find him also kneeling down and staring into his eyes. What? Dion's ring was nestled in the palm of Cedric's hand, boldly shining back at him. You thief! Victor, will you marry me? The fox was still attempting to figure out how his partner had caught onto his plans and managed to steal the ring from him, when suddenly the words he'd never dreamt of hearing registered in his mind. Tears welled up in his eyes. If only he'd known his life would lead to all of this years ago, when he was fighting for survival on their hometown's old cobbled streets. For the first time, everything he'd done, all the paths and actions that he had taken, felt worthwhile. They'd all led to this. Yes. He sniffled. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. Of course I will. He let the coyote gently slide the ring onto his finger. A lonely flame in the glowing embers of the bonfire hit the gem set in the shining gold rim, its reflection sparkling across both of their faces. Victor cupped his hands and took hold of Cedric. The couple gradually got to their feet, but weren't able to move from where they stood. Their only option was to sit back down on the log behind them. It will be an honor to call you my husband. Truly it will. They both inevitably thought back to their past, their childhood friendship, rekindled relationship and romance that had brought them to this house and this new life. No more promises that I can't keep. Victor wiped his tears away. What do you mean? You stayed true to yours. You said that you'd never leave me. It's time that I keep mine in return. I promise to love and cherish you forevermore. Now it was Cedric's turn to be hit by an overwhelming bout of emotions. No sweet and longing dream could compare to the reality that he was living. Before he knew it, he was sobbing. Victor's clutch tightened. Cedric wished that he'd never let go. I'd often thought about the day that I'd find the courage to propose to you, Ced. I even had a speech planned and everything. But you bested me. I underestimated just how much of a clever rogue you've become. Cedric chuckled, wiping his damp nose. Absolutely nothing clever about it. I was talking about the idea of proposing to you with the others, and then I looked out the window and saw Dion slipping a tiny object into your hand. It wasn't subtle. Aye, sure. But when did you even get it off of me? The fox's eyes widened, until a moment later he let out a loud laugh. When you groped me earlier, I should have known. The fact that you did what you did only makes me love you even more. I didn't even know that was possible. Victor cleared his throat, attempting to sound as confident as he could. Thank you. Thank you for making my life less lonely. This world we live in is one that doesn't see us as acceptable, rich or poor. The life we live is forbidden. But this home is ours. This life is ours, and I want it to remain like this forever, blissful and peaceful, within your loving arms. We have escaped those who sought to harm us, and now we are free to live, free to love, and free to grow old together. No other words were spoken after this, only love lingering in the evening air. The love of two severed souls nature had guided back to each other. The end, I guess. So yeah, that was the end. It was nice. Except for the part where there were military helicopters flying above my house. But yeah, that was nice. I was expecting the part with Lysander to, like, go on a little bit longer, and I was expecting the to see... Oh, hello and thank you for reading Project New Moon's A Fall from Grace. This visual novel's entire plot was conceived on 2 voice calls between myself and a friend back in around March of 2022. And now, after 4 years, 8 chapters, and almost too many illustrations and music tracks to count, it has reached its conclusion. Though if you had enjoyed A Fall from Grace and are hungry for more, we've got you covered. This isn't the last time that we'll be exploring the world and these characters. Since this was my first ever visual novel, my initial aim was to create a story that would embrace many different subjects, both visual and thematic, that have been dear to me over the years. One example is how this game's OST draws its inspiration from traditional English folk songs, which I have been fascinated by for over a decade now. As a result, A Fall from Grace is a very personal work that I couldn't be more proud of. A special thanks to my good friend Mash, the chief editor, proofreader, and storyline aide for the project. Without Mash's help, we would not be able to release this or any of the previous builds to you now. Not to mention, he's responsible for the lyrics to the 7th chapter's original song, The Damned Highwayman. And a big thank you to our coder, Kamek, for his own hard work on the 3rd build, as well as the many other friends that have helped and supported me since the very beginning, including but not limited to Marcy of Eden's Reach, and One Last Night for helping with certain elements of the coding, and to my partner, JK Wolf, for additional musical track edits. As well as a massive thank you to everyone in the Project New Moon's Discord server and our amazing moderator, Okami Butter and Thunger. If you did enjoy this visual novel, be sure to follow us or join us on Discord server using the icons on the main menu. Also consider following Project New Moon on HIO as well. We're working on many new projects, such as the recently published Moonlighters visual novel, which I shamelessly encourage you to check out. Plus, A Fall from Grace itself is getting a definitive version in July to celebrate its 4th year anniversary. This will include both art and writing additions, which will make it an even better read. We also have a link on the main menu to our Patreon if you would like early access to our future projects. We post early script drafts, concepts and character art, and much more on the Patreon too. So if you like what you're doing, or what we're doing, and want bonus content and early access, it's all there. Thank you all. Hope you enjoyed Project New Moon's A Fall from Grace. Okay. Like I was saying, I kind of wish that we saw Dion blowing Lysander's brains out. And I think technically we would have, but it wasn't ready yet. But yeah. It's so weird to believe that this is another finished visual novel, considering the one on the right is effectively dead. And the one on the left is still ongoing. It's just taking a while. But yeah, like, this is one of a few of the visual novels I can say, hey, it's done. This is a complete work. And then in July, it's just going to be like I guess like kind of a quality of life update for it, but like really, this is it. And how they said that there is going to be a little bit more from A Fall from Grace. That's actually like a spin-off visual novel where you get tales from the various Masquerade members. I don't know if it's going to include the new one, but it doesn't. It's basically all the members that you know and love: Dion, Tiger, Cat, Selwyn, Sunbear, Doberman, and I guess maybe the skunk, maybe Vincent. But yeah, we get like some of their stories, and you're gonna be able to see that. And I do plan on reading Moonlighters. It's set on a more modern era, but there's like ghosts, I think, or something. It's not supposed to be like horror or anything like that, but there's like ghosts, and like I think the main character can see ghosts and can talk to them and whatnot. I don't know. I'm trying really hard to remember, but it's just like escaping me right now. But yeah, it was a joy to read because it was something completely different from, well, not completely different because it's still like I found the person that I'm gonna fall in love with, and I'm gonna stay with for the rest of my life type of story. But it is set in a very different era. He's a thief. I don't know, it just felt different to me. And it was pretty cool to read. But yeah, there's more to come from these writers. So yeah, if you want to support them, consider joining their Patreon. Anyways, so what did you think of the story overall? Did you like it? Did you like some bits of it? Did you not like other bits? Did you want the story to veer a little bit differently? Did you, I don't know, maybe want the Lysander to survive but be incredibly crippled? Just leave him to stew in his own misery? I don't know, write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching/listening. If you would like to play A Fall from Grace or any of the other visual novels that they're going to be writing, you can do so by going down to the link in the description, which I have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download and play the game yourself. Like I said, they do have a Patreon, which you can subscribe to and get earlier access to builds of any of the other visual novels that they're working on and behind-the-scenes stuff, as they said. And if you would like to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member, which gives you earlier access to these videos as they're being scheduled. But this is being recorded on the 2nd of April, and hopefully I'll have it by maybe the 3rd, 4th, I don't know. It depends how fast I can work. But yeah, what else? Any form of support helps, you like the videos, subscribe to the channel. I also have a Ko-fi in case you want to, donate through there. I am saving up for a laptop. So, if you have some expendable income that you might want to send my way, there's the Ko-fi. Any bit helps. And I also have a throne. So yeah. Anyways, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.